Hey everybody, I'm Greg Sowell, and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I talk to interesting people and try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. My guest this go-around is Mather Zickel. He's a professional actor who started life in New York City and with multiple tries, a few starts and stops in there, finally made the migration to LA. He started in theater and, as expected, moved to TV and movie. He's actually been at it for I think a couple of decades up to this point. When asked if he would ever teach, it was a resounding no. He was very adamant about that. But for someone who doesn't want to teach, he seems to understand much of the psychology and method, I'm doing air quotes on method, that it takes to be successful. And I found that sometimes those that are the most reluctant can make the best teachers. Maybe a little food for thought for all of us, huh? So please share this with a friend if you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy this chat with Mather. Mather Zickel, thank you for joining me on the Why Am I podcast.
Thanks, Greg. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So I am so pleased to have you here. I feel like, after that meal, you feel so fancy. So I feel like I run into you at the Banana Republic or something. Maybe they're having a sale you're looking for.
God, I hope not. When I go to the Banana Republic, if I'm just, stuck for a pair of slacks that, no one would ever notice. But sure.
Oh man, that just gave me flashbacks to cargo pants. I remember when that was the hotness. Let's not do that.
Do you remember the old Banana Republic catalog?
I don't.
From the 80s? No, I don't know how old you are, but I remember when Banana Republic actually started, and it was in the early 80s, and I was a kid, but they would send out this catalog that it's basically the kind of catalog that the J. Peterman Company kind of ripped off a few years later, which was, it was cargo pants, but it was all like safari style clothing. And it's for people who wanted to dress up like Indiana Jones. It was, you could get the hat, you could get that leather jacket at the Banana Republic, like a leather aviator jacket, and, some pleated, dark pleated wool, like khakis or something like that. And, it was all, they were kind of selling a fantasy.
Yeah. Are you trying to pretend like that didn't appeal to you?
Oh, it absolutely appealed to me. I wanted all that stuff when I was that age.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is that age being 14.
Yeah. I think that still secretly appeals to me.
Yeah.
The practicality, though, I'm too lazy nowadays. I don't actually want to attempt to do any of those.
No,
things.
you don't want to. And then you're like, who am I fooling? I'm just fooling myself.
But let's say,
and then this is before it just became mock turtles and V-neck sweaters and whatever they sell.
This bodes well.
Khakis.
I think you're going to have interesting opinions on virtually anything I say.
She knows.
We're doing hot takes on 80s men's fashion already.
Yeah.
I feel like this is
really a terrible decade in fashion, I think, but probably my least favorite decade in fashion.
Oh my gosh. Now we're going to do the top 10 decade breakdown. No. So you and I run into each other, right? We have start up a conversation. I talk about who I am and quickly exhaust that because, underneath this leather jacket, that's kind of puffy around the collar, right? To complete the Indiana Jones look, there's not really much left to me. So it's your turn to reciprocate, Mather. So who are you, bud?
Who am I? Who am I? I'm a 52-year-old man, American, professional actor. I'm a father. I'm a New York transplant to California, Los Angeles. I'm a New York Giants fan. I enjoy boxing and hiking, and board games, and I don't know. Those are the broad strokes, I would say.
I love that you.
I can understand this. You had another friend who this evoked existential dread in them, and I can see why.
How do you
it's
summarize
it's sort of like that moment, and I don't know if you ever saw the, the Albert Brooks film "Defending Your Life."
I haven't seen that one.
It's a movie from some time ago, but it's about him dying and basically not going to heaven, but going to sort of a like a mid-level hotel where he has to live, and then he has like an attorney of sorts who sort of like presents his life to the powers that be to try to decide whether he lived a fulfilling or productive or meaningful life. And he just has a horrible time because they just kind of go through his life, and they keep replaying incidents from his life where he just consistently failed. Usually in courage, he had several moments of opportunities that were presented that he was too afraid to take.
I feel like that's pretty explanatory of a lot of my life is failure. I fail and fail and fail until something works, and then I move on to something else and just fail at that until it seems to function.
Until you run out
okay.
of stuff.
Yeah. I continually find things to fail at. Don't worry about that, Mather.
Good.
I haven't run out of that yet. But yeah.
Well,
feels like that's
it is
how I
our
learned,
lot, isn't it? Hopefully we fail better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Learn to fail better.
So you called yourself a professional actor. I've talked to actors before, but I've never talked to one who described themselves as professional. Why the word professional?
I guess that's interesting. I guess because I think an actor can be an easy thing to call yourself. It's possible to act in things and, but to really make a career of it and to sustain yourself and to, I don't know, putting the time in, like to know that it's a vocation and not just a pastime. I guess I want to, I guess I wanted to indicate that I support myself doing it and have for some time. And I don't know, I take a certain amount of pride in that, or maybe it's just trying to counter an insecurity about being an actor at all, because it just, sometimes it just sounds like a, it's kind of a squishy kind of life choice.
Yeah. I mean,
but it doesn't have to be,
I think sometimes when you hear somebody say actor, that's almost evocative of like a pipe dream, right? It's like, I have this hope, I want to do this thing.
Yeah, and it's something easy in a way. Like you can call yourself an actor with no professional credentials.
It's not like, you can't say you're a doctor, like a medical doctor. Yeah,
exactly. Because then you would be flat out lying. But you could say you're an actor, and maybe you've done some acting. Maybe it's not hard to wind up acting in something. But it's hard to make a life of it.
I like how you described it as a vocation. To me, that evokes like something you have to work at. It's a skill that you really have to hone.
Well, it takes practice. Well, it takes experience, but I try to shy away from using the word artist. I don't like to use that. I'm not saying that acting is not an art, because I think it is, but here again, I think it's one of those terms that actors particularly like to use to feel better about their own, their own vocation. I call it a vocation. It's a job with, it's a skill, it's a craft, it's a lot of things, and it can be art. I mean, it is an artistic endeavor, but I had a teacher once described it as a secondary art, meaning you can't do it alone. Like it doesn't exist by itself. It has to exist in the context of something else, meaning writing, often, or some direction. If you're a musician, you can play music by yourself. You can go into a room, you can go somewhere and just create music. If you're a painter, you can go paint. But if you're an actor, you can't go into your back room and just act. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. You can rehearse, but without a partner and particularly an audience, it's sort of, it kind of loses context in a way. So acting is presentational. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. I had a teacher who described it that way, and that made sense to me.
Do you feel like that put more focus on the audience piece for you? Like the idea that I'm actually doing this for an audience, the idea that there has to be, because it kind of feels like a yin and yang, right? It's like the idea we don't do anything in, I've heard, let me reel it back a little bit. I've heard people describe artists or people who create things as they don't do it just for themselves. They do it so other people can enjoy it, right? Because ultimately,
yeah. I mean, acting is made to be seen. You have to see it for it to even exist. Otherwise, you're performing for yourself and, in front of the mirror or just in space. And you are giving something, you should be giving something of yourself in it.
So I did a little digging on you, and you've done live theater acting as well as, you've done.
I started in that. TV, right? I trained for that, and yeah.
So which do you feel feeds you the most? I guess not necessarily. Obviously, what pays the bills is your film and TV, but kind of creatively, when we're talking about feedback from the audience.
Well, it can all feel fulfilling, but theater has the it's got benefits. It's got creative benefits that the others often don't share, which is I think there's more of a community created when you do a play. And this is, particularly with cast, with director, and often with, designers, with stage managers, you're really sort of depending on each other in a certain way. And there's a lot more interaction between those departments, I think. And specifically for the cast and the director is that you rehearse. And rehearsal is it is truly a creative process. You're really making something. You're taking a piece of writing, or, it could be something improvisational as well, but you're creating something, you're finding something, and you're shaping it. And that is something that doesn't really occur so much in film, and even less in television.
That sounds, it's I'm trying to put myself in it feels almost, I don't know, experimental. To me,
it's like you're making something. You're figuring out, you have a script, you have a play. Maybe it's a play that's been done a million times in other forms, or maybe it's a new play. I did a lot of new theater, a lot of new plays when I was starting out, and when I was in New York. I probably did a lot more original plays than I did revivals of anything. And you're kind of, particularly when you're working on a new play, you're figuring out what this play is, and the playwright is often on hand, more often than not, because the playwright is also trying to figure out what it is that they're trying to say or what they're creating. And there are rewrites that happen. There's a lot of things get cut. Sometimes things get added, and you're figuring it out what it is. It is experimental. Yeah, you're testing things out. You're trying things one way, or you're discussing it, and you're figuring out what this story is and what it's saying, and who these people are and why, and that's exciting. It's really engaging. I mean, in a way, it can be more fun for me than performing even. Performing can be really gratifying if you have an audience that's very responsive to what you're doing, and that's really great. But figuring it out is, it's a collaborative process. By the time a play opens, it tends to be set. There's not a lot of, through previews, whatever, sometimes there's adjustments made after a play is opened. But really, on opening night, that's kind of the play as set. That's what the blocking is. These are the light cues. These are the lines that, but leading up to that, you're figuring all that stuff out, and that's fun. And it can get really, it can be very emotional too, and testy at times. I've been in productions where, people really get mad at each other or hurt, or, a little too vulnerable at times, and, I call it I love it in rehearsal, and it's usually around tech week or so that there's a little blood on the floor, where things feel a little out of control or a little bad or something, where, you can tell that people's emotions are exposed, and that can often propel the play into a deeper place. That it's sort of oh yeah, now we're going to here, because in a way it takes time to trust your fellow cast members.
Did you find yourself in those places?
To go to someplace. What's that?
Did you find yourself in those places too, where you were getting upset and all that? Was that part of the process?
I try to keep it within the context, hopefully, it doesn't become really personal, and you just develop a bad relationship with someone outside of the stage. But it can be combustible.
I
think it's a little exciting when that happens.
I
often feel like this is probably not a bad thing.
So many things in life, especially if you are just this tiny cog in this big machine, and you feel kind of, I don't know, just replaceable. But to me, it feels like if you are discovering who this character is,
and you are, by the way, as an actor, you are replaceable.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding about that. You are you're. As much as you think that they need you, there's always someone else.
Yeah. Somebody else just dying to get that
and
position.
Someone else who can be just as good or better than you. And they're different. They're not going to be like you, but they're going to be something. And it doesn't have to be you. And that's another thing to recognize in acting.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just thinking in the early part of the process, if you actually get to shape who this character is, even if it does meet a revival, that piece of you that helped shape this character will still be there, right? So kind of your mark will be on it.
You mean in yourself, or
what
do you mean?
If you're working with a playwright to kind of, because I'm assuming they're
certainly adjusting. No, if you're doing an original play, you can really influence how that character, and certainly how the writer perceives that character. And, you got cast in this role for some reason. They liked something about you that they felt was correct. But you have the chance to make a first impression on a character. If you do a revival of a play, the challenge is, how do I bring something original to a part that's been played thousands of times by different people over years? You suddenly become part of a tradition of this, whatever, this person played, how am I going to take on, Edmund Kean's Hamlet or Olivier's Hamlet or any of these, these traditions of, many people have come before you.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, the idea of you talking about also being replaceable, I guess that kind of goes back to like the idea of how many hungry people there are to kind of break in. You mean
endless.
Yeah. And
endless.
So
yeah.
replaceable. That's that also sounds kind of scary. It's like,
it is.
Do you always
scary.
feel like the rug could be pulled out from underneath you at any point?
Mm-hmm.
Just pretty much indefinitely. That's the feeling.
Yeah. Even when you get apart. I mean, I've been fired from jobs before where people decided after they cast me that I wasn't right, that I'm not what they wanted.
How do you, I mean, you've been doing this for what, 2 decades now? How do you kind of reconcile that? You just becomes part of you?
It's just an experience of the profession.
I guess.
And, it often evokes hard feelings. And, there's, it's almost impossible to get fired and not feel shitty about it.
Yeah.
But, you have to move forward and say, well, it happens. And it's not necessarily your fault. I mean, it could be a behavioral thing or a conflict with the people who are hiring you. And then that can feel really bad, because you don't want to develop bad relationships. Although, that can happen, you can clash with people, but, you don't want to you don't want to be known for somebody who's hard to work with, but, sometimes you just get replaced because it's not working for them, what you're doing. And maybe they only discover that after seeing it. It's a tough pill to swallow. But then you have to look at it, you're like, well, this happens in all professions.
Yeah.
People get fired.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's just like somebody wants somebody else. Like, I don't like the plumber I hired to do my pipes, so I'm going to get another guy.
Yeah. Do you feel like that makes you
jaded? They probably
jaded?
don't take it personally. What?
Do you feel like that makes you jaded? Like, is it inevitable to get jaded if you stay in the industry?
It's not jaded. I mean, it's only jaded if you got replaced, for some other reason, like, oh, they got a bigger name or something, they got something else, or, like there's all manner of terrible things that can happen and disappointing things. There's so much disappointment in this career. But you have to just accept certain things that, if they go badly, that it's not the end of the story, and you will get something, you will fight another day. And you just gotta, you gotta stick up for yourself and just say, like, look, I did what I thought was right.
That's cool. So you develop like, or maybe you have to have some perseverance.
And well, you absolutely have to have perseverance. And then it's also an opportunity to look back and say, like, well, why did that happen? What is it that wasn't working for them? And then it's an opportunity to look at your own behavior.
I can dig it. It sounds, I mean, every job, there's shitty parts of the job. You mentioned plumbers. They literally have to work with poop. So, everybody's got something they've got to deal with inside of whatever their vocation is, their chosen one.
And actors and other people in entertainment and the arts, take it particularly hard. One, because it's really hard to get a job anyway. That losing one is really, can be demoralizing. But it also feels personal, particularly as an actor, because it's you.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's not just like, the product you're selling or whatever, it's absolutely you as a person who they didn't want.
Yeah. There's something very specific about you that didn't quite fit. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, that's hard.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I'm not accustomed to being judged in that fashion. So I don't think I would take to it too well. Yeah. Not that I mean, obviously.
It's not for everybody, and it shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't be for everyone. It's not, people think it's, you could just do it, and, there's so much to it that people may not expect, just thinking that, you just go in and like read some lines and you could do it. And some people can, I mean, some people are naturally gifted. It's not, it ain't, it's not rocket science. It's, you don't have to go to school. You don't have to do all this preparation. You don't need a degree, but you have to have something. And sometimes that's just a, an innate charisma. But you also have to be, technically savvy enough to understand, like, you have to know your lines, you have to know how to connect with another person, you have to, some people are very charismatic, and you think, oh, this guy is like, he'd be great. And then they kind of freeze up or something. And, that takes practice. But it really can be anybody, but it shouldn't be anybody. Because it's a little more than that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tell me something unexpectedly. Well, maybe it was something that was unexpected for you, or maybe something unexpected for the majority of people you talk to. Just unexpectedly fun or joyous or beautiful about your profession.
Well, the people you meet, you have the pleasure and the opportunity to work with many, many people, because every time a show ends, it's like the circus. You pack up the tents and it's gone. It's gone. And then, people go their separate ways, and then you get into another cast, and you're with a whole different bunch of people. And then you start to see people down the road that you've worked with before, and like, this person knows this person, and you realize you're part of like a growing community of professionals, of artists. And, now I use the artist term, but there are many artists, in all, in all departments of film and television and theater. And it's just a special moment that you get to meet people and sometimes have rather intimate relationships with them when you're, depending on the material. You can really get to know people in a certain way and develop friendships. I'm not great at maintaining friendships after a job. But I think there's some relationships only last the length of the job. But sometimes that's okay, and then you're like, oh, we had this thing. It's sort of like, oh, we were in high school together, and now we graduated, and you're going here and I'm going here. And, maybe we'll run into each other down the way. And that's really nice when that happens. And it happens a lot, It's great to see people again in different venues and forms. And that's a joy.
It kind of sounds like summer camp. Like all of a sudden,
it is in a way, yeah.
Thrust together with this group of potential strangers. Maybe there's some familiar faces, and
right,
yeah.
And then you make something, and some people see it, and then it's done. And it's like, I mean, the nice thing about movies is they last. You can go back and watch them later. Theater has that wonderful ephemeral feeling of like, when it's done, it is done. And that also includes every performance. When it's done, like this night is the only night it's going to be exactly like this. Because as much as like performances can be repetitive over time, it's not exactly the same. Things are going to be different. An audience is going to be different. Somebody might do something slightly differently. You might be feeling different on a different night. Well, you absolutely will be feeling different on various nights. And that moment is there, and it's just created, and that audience sees it, and then it's gone. And there's something really beautiful about that.
That is beautiful. I had never thought about it put together in that way.
it's communal, and it's happening there and now, and then it's gone.
Yeah. And you all come together to create this experience for all these other people.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
but
that
also
includes the
yourself.
audience. The audience is part
Yeah.
of that when you do theater.
Yeah. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you miss that connection? Like,
You mean doing theater?
Yeah. Well, like, because
Yeah,
you
I
said you
haven't
started
done it so
theater, you
much in the
transitioned, right? So do
past
you kind
years.
of miss that a little
What's
bit?
that? Sorry.
I said you said you started in theater and then you transitioned to kind of doing more film stuff. Is that, do you feel like you've missed that portion of it a little bit?
Yeah, I wish it was more in my life than it is. I mean, I've gone back. I haven't done a play in about 5 years, which is a long time. There was a nice moment where I was doing about a play every year and a half in LA, while doing other stuff. That was really nice because that I really felt like I had a creative balance in my life between art and commerce, I suppose you would say. That felt fulfilling, and I haven't had that of late. But yeah, I do miss it.
Well, I guess you said about 5 years, so your year and a half span would have been hit by COVID, and I guess kind of everything shut down.
Yeah, there was no theater.
Yeah,
There was no theater for
there was no anything. It
about
was
2
crazy.
years. Well, yeah, I mean, TV started up before that. I did go back to work in the fall of 2020, under strict COVID guidelines. So things started to start up again, but theater took a big hit. And, I mean, Broadway, I don't think, it was really shut for almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, we're big fans of musical theater and stuff like that as well. And yeah,
You are?
Yeah.
What have you seen that you like recently?
Oh, what was the last thing I've seen? Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. Probably some community stuff. Because like a lot of the big stuff hasn't necessarily kind of picked up and started. Well, I don't know, I take that back. It has started touring kind of off Broadway down here in our area a little bit more as of the last year or so, but we've seen mostly kind of, just community stuff. Try and support all the.
That's
all
good.
The,
So you like to go to the theater?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, absolutely
Because
enjoy it.
not a lot of people do. I mean, in a way, I mean, it's a very vulnerable art form. It doesn't make money. It's very hard to make money in theater, for the producers, and a lot of people aren't interested. It's almost it's an art form from an older time.
I don't know. I feel more connected. Like when I go to theater, I feel very much more connected to that. So for me, this is probably TMI, but for like a long portion of my life, I didn't really like feel stuff. Like everything was kind of compressed and flat, which was great because I didn't really have lows, but again, I didn't really have highs. Right. And so, some of the places where I found where I'd actually would like genuinely feel things was when I'd go to the theater. Is this immersion, like inside the environment, almost like suspension of disbelief, like when you go to the movies, like,
yes,
I expect to see this crazy thing. Well, like in there,
yeah, if you're transported out of your life into the world of the play, then that's mission accomplished.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and I would like connect and I would feel things. And so it's always, well, not always, like ever since I found it, it's always been like a special thing for me. And yeah, like the theater acting piece, like the fact that people are willing to get up there and perform for me is like such a special thing. So I'm always curious when I hear people that like start there. Like I've never been on the other end of it. I don't want to be on the other end of it. I don't want to be up in front of an audience performing. I love to perform, but not in that fashion.
How do you perform?
Generally occupationally or doing stuff like this, right? This is a performative art of some sort, but I speak at a lot of conferences. I do stuff. So I don't mind getting in front of people. I don't really see myself doing that thing. I see a lot of musical theater as well, and I absolutely cannot sing, right? So that's not an avenue for me. But I've always been curious, like, because I know the way it makes me feel as an audience member to be it. And so on the other side of it, if you felt, so I've officiated like a couple of weddings, and I definitely love be able to make people laugh and then make them cry and then laugh, right? To be able to see that emotional
to
switch.
affect an audience.
Yeah, like that, like it was a very special experience to me. And so the idea that somebody could get that and then, you know, like move beyond it. Like I've heard a lot of, or I've talked to several actors. I can't say a lot. I've talked to several, and a lot of them started in theater and then move on to movies or television and kind of leave that behind. But it seems like such a magical, special thing. It's like for me, it just seems like it'd be hard to leave behind. But I guess also constraints, right? Like life gets in the way. Like you said, art versus commerce. Like I've got to feed my kid.
Well, you know, it's a large time commitment to do a play. It takes you out of, you know, out of schedule for other things in your life, and it's, you know, I mean, the older I get, you know, it's a sport. It's an athletic endeavor. I mean, like, you know, you have to stay in a certain amount of shape, you know, your voice, but you know, it's physically demanding.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Even if you're not doing a musical, which is absolutely physically demanding, no question. But even just a straight play can be like that.
Yeah, I didn't even contemplate the stamina required to stand in front of an audience for an hour.
8 shows a week, you know. I mean, you get tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though it's only 2 or 3 hours or whatever, you know, you'd be surprised. It can really draw a lot on you.
Yeah. And I guess also, like, if it is a really long running production, you probably, I'm not going to say you'd get bored, but it can be kind of mundane.
You do get bored. Yes, that's part of it too. You get bored, and how do you address that? You know, how do you find ways to not be bored? You know, how do you try to enliven it, keep it fresh? And you know, sometimes that can lead to bad behavior, but you start like screwing with people on stage.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So people start playing practical jokes on each other and whatever, just trying to crack each other up. I was never one of those guys, but yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. You're trying to find something where you're not just going to sleep, and you're not, you know, and you're also, you know, hopefully not exactly trying to replicate something that you did before that might have been successful. That's a big challenge with acting. Like sometimes you have a great night, and then the next night you get out there and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do that again. And it often doesn't work. Or it's not, you know, because you have this sort of anticipation about what it's going to be. Whatever made it special was something that happened in the moment, usually, not something that you engineered.
Not something
so
that you can manufacture.
Sort of like open again, like, yeah, try not to push things, make something happen the way it did another time.
Which that's like what antithetical to what like stand-up comedians do, right? It's like somebody laughs in a specific way, or that get a bigger laugh. It's like, okay, let's keep that. Let's scrap this, and just constantly adjusting, trying to find the biggest.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's a lot of experimentation in stand-up where, you know, people develop their act, and, you know, they adjust it. They adjust how a punchline is going to go, or a pause, a delivery, you know, and a funny person, you know, and a professional will just keep sort of experimenting with it till it gets to its maximum potential. And then if it's not working, they'll probably cut it, you know?
For sure. Well, I'm assuming you started your theater work in New York. You said you're from New York area, right?
Yeah, I was born in the city and then moved to Westchester when I was 2 and grew up there and then returned to New York. And very close to New York. I mean, I grew up a half-hour drive from New York City. And then came back for NYU. I went to the Tisch School of the Arts and was there for 4 years and then stayed in New York after that for about 15 years.
So were your parents, were they like very artistic? Did they do a lot of this stuff?
No, I mean, my father dabbled in it. My father was a doctor actually, but he definitely had a love of the theater and the arts and music. My mother appreciated it, but she never pursued it in any way. But my father, when he was a performer in high school when he was young, and then when he went to college and medical school, he would write musicals and perform in them.
That's cool.
And he wrote lyrics. He wanted to be a lyricist. He almost left medicine to become a professional lyricist at one point when he was young. He wanted to be like Alan J. Lerner.
Is it hard for you to see that in your dad? Like knowing him as like Dr. Dad?
Is what hard?
Like that he almost quit medicine to become a lyricist.
No. I mean, I think that was something I always loved about him and was fascinated by. And I think it was something that, my interest in the theater, he was sympathetic to because of that.
Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah.
I never could play piano. He could play piano a bit. And I think he had a nice singing voice when he was younger. But it was, that was something that made it easier for me to pursue this as a career because I knew he was sympathetic in that way.
Yeah, or even encouraging, huh?
And encouraging, I mean, he, certainly had his trepidation about it, like every parent does. Know that their child is going to go into the arts. But I think he wanted to encourage, his kids to pursue what they were interested in and not to interfere with that. And in my case, he supported it. I mean, he sent me to NYU. I got they paid for my school.
That's cool.
And that's a lot of money.
It is a lot. Yes, absolutely. Then and now.
I think they were always like, what the hell are we getting out of this? I think they're probably, what is it you're learning there exactly that you couldn't do outside of why do you have to go to this university that costs $4 million? And that's a very legitimate question. And I don't have a great answer.
Do you feel like it was really formative?
To be learned, but you're also like, why are we doing it this way?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this way. Did
it feel like a very formative time for you up there in college?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a complicated relationship with acting studio. I really, I went about it with very good intentions and good faith. And I wanted to be good. And I wanted to apply myself. At the same time, a lot of it I found quite baffling. I wanted to think that I understood what I was being taught, and a lot of times I really didn't. And it's, there's a lot of advice that so much I'd forgotten, you get told so many things. But certain things filtered in, and, I think I learned enough to develop some sort of working process, which ultimately is your own. I mean, I went to this, studio. I went to Circle in the Square, and there's a notion, or I had this idea that by the time I graduate, I will have a method of preparing for a role. And That's kind of true. However, you get told so many things that it's often, I found it difficult at times to reconcile what one person might tell me with what another person might tell me. And sometimes I found them contradictory. And so I got very caught up in the weeds of wanting to do things in the right way. And the truth is there is no right way. There's only paths to inspiration. Ultimately you have to put together, some working method that works for you. And they don't have to be the same as what other people do. And they shouldn't be. I mean, we're different people. And so I had a really complicated relationship with acting class. I mean, I was an eager student, but I was also a frustrated student.
Do you feel like acting class is kind of one size fits all? Like they want everybody to do everything exactly the same?
I'm
like
not
as
sure.
far as like as far as how they're instructing you, like because like you said, like I love that line, like there's no right way, only paths to inspiration. Like I've learned everybody learns in different ways. Everybody like some people are more auditory, some are more visual, some need a combination of all these things. And it sounds like they just kind of say, this is the way we're going to teach you. And so it's not necessarily what's going to work best for an individual.
Each teacher has their idea of like what they think works or may have worked for them as actors, or, maybe they've studied a tradition like the method, like they studied Strasberg's method or Adler's method or, like the great acting teachers of the mid-20th century, when acting became modernized and somewhat codified in a way in terms of how they taught people. I'm sure you've heard of the method.
I have not. Like you could talk to me. You could talk to me like I'm 5. I literally know nothing about this.
You never heard of method acting?
Oh yeah, I've heard it described as that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, really what that refers to is a school of thought, which really became many schools of thought based on the work. It was sort of like a leap into modernism for acting as an art. And modernism, and realism in a way. And it started with the Russians. It started with the Moscow Art Theater, and some of the members of that community. Boleslavsky, I think, was part of that. I don't know if he was original of the Moscow Art Theater. Stanislavski's the most famous. And the work, combined with the works of Anton Chekhov. And they really endeavored at the beginning of the 20th century to bring the theater to a more real experience, as it not just sort of depicting a story or going through the forms or motion. A lot of acting was very presentational before that, and stories were told in a sort of presentational way, often in a very structured, well-made way. And Chekhov started writing plays that were just about people interacting, like people in a family where they're going to sell the house, or they're going to, this is happening, or somebody's got to get married. And it's not even that the whole plot is revolving around like, oh, what's going to, we got to sell that. It really just became, he created all these characters in a play that just had their own lives going on. And it was how they interacted with each other. And that became sort of the drama. And like, I think when they first presented some of his plays, he was very disappointed, because I think they were presentational, and he was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not playing the music I'm writing. And the Moscow Art Theater found ways, the actors and directors involved with it started to try to find a new way to act, where there was a private life for the character, and the character has a life that exists outside of the words of the play. This character has a history and has a very complicated relationship to the other characters in the play. And then it was a matter of like, how does the actor themselves bring their humanity to the role and sort of make this person seem like a real person and not just like a character in a story, a type, So this was revolutionary. This changed everything we understand about acting today. So this method moved to the United States, specifically New York, and some of those teachers came over and started studios, and then they started teaching Americans, and then those Americans started their own schools. Most famously, the Actors Studio. I don't know if you've heard of the Actors Studio, which was created by Lee Strasberg, and I forgot who else started that. And they specifically taught an acting method that was derived from the Russian method.
That's interesting.
They had very definite ideas about what it meant to be an actor and to bring yourself to a role and how to work on a role and how to live. Like they wanted to create like something alive on stage and not something frozen in amber.
Gotcha. So you really want to like embody the character itself, like
embody the character, and also just be alive to the experience of what's happening then at that moment.
Like right there. That's cool.
Yeah, like something's going on in the audience, like Lee Strasberg, I think, used to say, it's like, don't ignore anything. Like if, I think he gave advice to like somebody like Christopher Walken one year. Christopher Walken was a member of the Actors Studio and he was doing a scene. And like somebody dropped a bunch of like silverware or something outside, like right outside. They made this huge crash, and they just kept doing the scene. And afterwards, Strasberg was like, "Did you hear that huge crash? Like what? Like you didn't even respond to that, because like we all heard it, So it's just a different way of looking at like what life can be on stage." And that absolutely changed how we think about acting, and it infiltrated all versions of that of the acting profession. Marlon Brando famously changed film acting and stage acting to a large degree, because he would just kind of do what he felt like was, so there was something really sloppy about him. He just brought himself and his own quirks. He was very much his own sensibility, and he would do things that were unexpected, not directed. And, that was absolutely new when he started doing that. Today, we think of the method actor as like the person who like never drops character. I never get out of character. I'm always in character. I go home and I'm in character, which is insane. Like, come on. You're not going to go to the bank, as, Queen Elizabeth. It's sort of, you're, you're a person, but it's a way of immersing, of bringing your personal experience and you, often your own quirks, to a character.
It's interesting to hear you talk about it.
And in the service of the play, you're trying to tell a story, and like, but in that sense, like no one is ever going to do a role the same way because people are different.
Have you ever thought about teaching before?
I've thought about it and rejected it very quickly.
Why do you think that is? I don't have a way
to teach people how to do that. I had a teacher who was trained to teach people how to do that. So he had a lot a lot of material and a lot of his own experience to draw upon. I'm not nearly that organized in my thinking, or like, there's a lot of different roads to Rome, and I don't really want to tell anyone which one to take. And ultimately, a lot of acting teachers, I mean, ultimately they're just kind of small-time directors in a way. I mean, they're just telling people the way they think it should be done, which is fine. Hopefully that's not the way it's handled, but you have an opinion about how a scene should go or what a character should be, and like why are you not doing this, or maybe if you tried this, and I don't know, then ultimately you're being a director. It's hard to get to teach an actor how to think for themselves.
That's interesting perspective. Never thought about that. I guess you just get so used to, I mean, you're trained, right, to be able to take direction. You're not often on the other side of that, on the other side of the camera.
And I should have, I wish I had more experience on the other side. I wish I'd been a director at some point, or a playwright. And I never did that stuff, and I have some regrets about that, although I'm not sure how good I would be at it.
Yeah, but you never know, right?
Organization of thinking that, like, sometimes I think I lack. But
well, and also getting some experience on the other side can help inform how you're going to do the other thing, right? So it would probably make you a better actor anyway, right?
Without question.
Yeah. I dig it, man. So New York transplant. So you were in New York. Time was right. You came to LA. How hard was that decision?
It was hard. It took me about 15 years to move out to LA. I kept trying, and I would come out and then I'd run home. LA kind of scared me for a long time.
Really? Was it just not really having any family or really knowing anybody? Just not safety net?
It became easier when I did have people I knew. I would start to come out for pilot seasons and stuff like that. And when I first came out for pilot season, it was kind of fun. And it was like summer camp in a way, because there were a bunch of friends from NYU who also came out at that time. And we sort of clung to each other as a group because we were all in a new place and trying to figure it out and trying to get work. So that was interesting. And then we made some new friends. I made a friend who was a screenwriter who I got along with really well. And, we're still friends to this day. And, a couple of years after I first came out for a pilot season, then I went back to New York, and then we stayed in touch. And then he asked me to collaborate on a screenplay at one point. And so I came back to LA, and then I was spending a year and a half, like, going back and forth from New York and LA and working on this screenplay. And so I had that experience in town, and that was really interesting and also intimidating in a lot of ways. Learning about that stuff, taking meetings with studio development people and producers, and just really working on a script. But my friend taught me how to write a screenplay. That was another method I learned, which was valuable. But then I ran back to New York again. Then I'm like, a screenwriter out here, this just seems like scary. And I just found something isolating about LA, which I think a lot of people experience about Los Angeles. It's a big place. It's not really a city, it's a county. And it's very hard not very hard, but significantly harder to interact with people in LA than it is in New York. New York is a contact sport. As soon as you leave your apartment, you are just bouncing off of people, for better or worse. Um, but it's easier to form relationships because people are on hand. LA is not like that. LA, you like to even know where to go to see people or to try to connect with someone. It's very baffling, and I found it very isolating. So I was afraid of it, even though I had some friends there. I just felt as a business, it just felt monolithic and just isolate. I've said isolating, but I just didn't know where a door was to get in to start to do anything or to meet a theater company or to connect with people. I didn't know how to do that. So it took years of coming back. I would come out for a pilot season, a month here, a month there. Then I go back to New York. And then I had this kind of happy existence where I was spending time in both cities. And that went on for about 10 years. And then I fell in love and I had a relationship with someone who was out here, and she made LA suddenly, for the first time in my life, feel something like a home. And so then I look forward to coming to LA to see her, to experience LA with her. And then she would come to New York and spend some time with me, and we would do things. And we had a long distance relationship for several years, and we're still together. And then, in the winter, December of 2011, I finally gave up my New York apartment and I decided to come to LA full time.
Was that one of the scariest things you've done, letting that go?
It was scary, but it was also at that point, it kind of felt like I'm tired of I'm tired of trying to maintain an apartment and finding a sublet at the last moment for going out. Money was, if money wasn't an issue, I would have kept a New York apartment. But I had years of just like booking a plane ticket, saying I'm going to leave February 1st to go out to LA, and then getting up to January 28th and being like, I have no one to rent my apartment while I'm away. I need a subletter. And the stress of that was, it was something I didn't want in my life anymore. And I finally came back after one trip. I don't know. I'd had sort of a difficult sublet on the last round. I wasn't happy about that. And then I just came back to the apartment. I was like, I don't need to keep this. It's not that great. It's fine, and it served its purpose. And then I was like, I want a new life. And, CJ and I are going to live together, and we're going to start out by, I'm going to move into her apartment, and then, which I did. I packed up my stuff. I gave up my apartment. I shipped my stuff out west, and I moved into her apartment. And then about a month later, I found a house to buy. And at that point, I had the monies to do it, because I had been working in LA, and I had made some money.
That's cool.
Yeah. And here I am.
And there you are. I like how you phrased it, experience LA with her, and then she would experience New York with you. That's one of my absolute favorite things, is for me and my partner to like go and discover a new place together. So I travel semi-regularly for work, and sometimes I'll have free time, and I don't know, I could go and I could discover this place, but it just, I don't know, it feels a little bland if I don't have like my riding buddy with me, to like go and discover and experience these new things.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, I've had this feeling, it's like, doesn't an experience seem more real if someone else is there to also reflect that?
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard to hang on to experiences when it's just in your own memory.
Yeah, and to like muse over it, and like, you'll hear some guy say something crazy. There's stuff. So I met my wife when I was really young. I was 16. And so there's stuff that we heard people say then that we still say now, like as a joke. You know what I mean? So It's just like
Yeah,
all of that.
I mean, wow, that's 16. That is deep history.
Yeah, it's a deep cut, man. So we've been together, I think 25 years. So it's been a
Wow.
really long time. So it's just, I don't know, you get to where it's so much more fun to experience with somebody else. Yeah, and I've never really been able to fully quantify why I enjoy it just absolutely so much. I think it's so many things kind of layered together, but that definitely, that hits home with me. Like how much my wife said it perfectly. She said home is, it's not a place, it's a person. And so I feel that with her. It's like no matter where we are, it's like I'm home. So
Yeah.
definitely, it sounds like that's a very similar case for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. So you get to LA and life's been golden ever since. No speed bumps, no hiccups. Everything's been great.
No hiccups. It's smooth sailing. No, I've been out here. God, what year is it? 11 years. This is 11 years I've been out here.
And it feels like home now.
It does, of course. I mean, I bought a home, and now we have a young son, and I've been here for a while, and and most of my friends that I knew in New York live here now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I've made other friends here since then.
Yeah,
and
found some real people.
Yeah, but I mean, it's tough. It's still a tough business, and it's just, it has its challenges, obviously. But I have something which I wouldn't have had back in New York, which is a house with a pool.
Do you try not to take the pool for granted whenever you get in it?
I do kind of take it for granted, but CJ does not. She absolutely. Well, I think she insisted on having a house with a pool because she loves the pool, and she uses it much more than I do, and so does our son.
That's cool. That's cool.
He loves it.
So yeah,
I take my obligatory dip here and there, but I'm the kind of guy who, will jump in the pool, swim one end, come back, and get out and towel off, and
Yeah, and say you've had your shower for the day and just go.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm not, like
who needs soap?
She'll hang out in the pool. She'll like play with pool toys. She'll be like bobbing around. She'll be playing with him, and I'm just kind of like, okay, I've been in the pool. Now I'm getting out of the pool. Like I've swum. I can take a dip. I don't want to like just hang out in the water. Like,
that's cool. Game changer for me was a hot tub. Like I'm not a hot tub guy. I would have never bought one. The house came with one. And like as I get more old and decrepit, the more I find myself in there. So it's definitely become part of my routine, my regiment now. It's
that we need to do that at some point. Then I would spend a little more time in the spa.
There you go. All right, Mather. Well, I'll tell you what, you have been extremely generous of your time. And I want to, like, I genuinely think of time when somebody gives it to me as a gift. Like, it's the most precious commodity. You can't get anything else. Like, I've always heard you get more employees, you can get more money. The getting more money part's always been difficult for me, but I understand it is possible, but you can't buy more
time. It's not lying in the street. It's not in the street.
It's not growing on trees either.
I had an agent, a commercial agent, who used to say that. It's just like, you're not going to find it in the, how much am I getting paid for this commercial? It's like, can we get more money? It's like, no, that's what they offered. You're not going to find it in the street.
I could dig it. I'm going to start telling my kids that.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I'm curious if there are any ways you'd like people that are listening to interact with you, like maybe on the internet. Obviously, you don't even know.
I'm on Instagram.
All right.
Under Mather Zickel. Yeah. Pretty sure it's handle. Can I do a plug?
Yeah, plug anything you want. What do you got?
I mean, I'm in a movie and in a Western that has just been released. It was in theaters last week. I don't know if it's still in theaters, but it is streaming. It's called Oregon Trail, Organ. and it is a Western thriller. And it's streaming on Amazon, Apple, and Vudu, I believe.
That's cool. So it's not a horror movie, it's a thriller.
It's almost a horror movie. It's practically a horror movie. It's violent. It's a violent movie.
Okay. And you have like a massive beard in that, right?
I should be. Did you look it up?
I may have perused it.
I do have a massive beard in that.
It's pretty impressive. Was that real or was that fake?
Oh no, that's real.
Oh. You got some real talent there, sir.
Yeah, well, I do, yeah. In the bearded arts, quite adept.